When my wife said, "No touching me today," I thought it was just another rough patch in our marriage. But when I found my best friend's phone in her car at a family party, the photos on that screen made my blood freeze. Discovering their affair was devastating, but what I learned about my wife's past and her deadly pattern nearly destroyed me completely. My name is Wesley Harwick. I'm 45 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Married to my college sweetheart, Celeste, for 17 years, owner of Peaceful Meadows Alpaca Farm in rural Montana. We had 43 alpacas, a thriving business, and tourists who came from 3 states over. The first red flag should have been when Celeste stopped helping with morning feeding. For years, she'd been right there beside me at dawn, filling water troughs and checking on the pregnant females. She knew every animal by name, but sometime around last spring, she started sleeping in. "I'm tired, Wes," she'd mumble when I'd kiss her forehead. "Just need more rest." Fair enough, I thought. Running a farm is exhausting work. Then came the phone calls. Celeste had always been social, but suddenly she was glued to that device like it held secrets. She'd step outside to take calls, claiming it was her sister or book club. When I'd walk into her room, she'd quickly flip the phone face down. New clothes appeared in her closet. Younger styles, brighter colors, things more suited for the city than a farm wife in Montana. She started going to a gym 30 minutes away. "I need to get back in shape," she'd say. "Feel like myself again." When I suggested we could set up a home gym in the barn, she just laughed. "You don't understand, Wes," she said, shaking her head. Our dinner conversations became stilted. She'd pick at her food while scrolling through her phone. When I asked about her day, she'd give vague answers about errands that never seemed real. The intimacy died next. Gradually, like a slow leak in a tire. Excuses became frequent. Headaches, exhaustion, or simply rolling away when I'd reach for her. When I tried to talk about it, she'd get defensive. "You're being needy, Wes," she'd say. "I need space to breathe." I threw myself deeper into farm work, convincing myself this was just a rough patch. Every marriage has them, right? I expanded our online presence, started offering specialized tours, even began breeding our prize-winning female, Luna. But deep down, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. The woman sharing my bed wasn't the same person who'd helped me chase escaped alpacas through the pasture while laughing until she couldn't breathe. That woman was disappearing, and I had no idea how to get her back. By late summer, the distance between Celeste and me had grown into something I couldn't ignore anymore. It wasn't just the phone calls or gym visits. She was physically present, but emotionally checked out completely. Our morning routine fell apart. I'd wake up at 5:30 like always, expecting to find her getting dressed for farm work, but instead she'd be locked in the bathroom, getting ready for another mysterious day out. "Where are you headed today?" I'd ask when she finally emerged, dressed in those new clothes that seemed too fancy for rural Montana. "Oh, just running errands," she'd say, not meeting my eyes. "Meeting Sarah for lunch, then maybe shopping." Sarah. That name came up a lot, but I'd never met this Sarah. In 17 years of marriage, Celeste had introduced me to all her friends, but Sarah remained a ghost. The alpacas started reacting to the tension too. Animals are sensitive that way. Luna, our prize breeding female, would get skittish whenever Celeste came near the fence. Even Bruno, our gentle giant male who'd always been Celeste's favorite, seemed to sense something was off. "They miss you helping with feeding," I told her one evening as we sat at opposite ends of the couch. "I'm sure they'll survive," she replied without looking up from her phone. "You managed fine before I came along." That stung more than I expected. Before she came along, we'd built this farm together, dream by dream, dollar by dollar. The worst part was how she'd react when I tried to bridge the gap. If I suggested we watch a movie together, she'd suddenly remember something urgent upstairs. If I offered to cook her favorite dinner, she'd claim she wasn't hungry. Physical affection became non-existent. No hand-holding during evening walks. No quick kisses in the kitchen. No sitting close on the porch swing we'd installed for sunset moments. One night, I tried to put my arm around her while we were watching TV. "No touching me today, Wes," she said, shifting away sharply. "I just need some space right now." Space. That word again. How much space does one person need in a marriage? I started wondering if something was wrong with me. Was I too clingy? Too boring? I tried changing things up, suggesting dinner dates in town, weekend trips, even talking about taking a vacation somewhere warm. But every suggestion was met with the same response. She was too busy, too tired, or just not interested. The woman I'd fallen in love with in college, the one who'd laugh at my terrible jokes and steal my hoodies just to smell like me, had been replaced by someone who treated me like a barely tolerated roommate. I should have demanded answers then. Should have insisted we talk about what was really going on. Instead, I just worked harder and hoped things would get better on their own. October brought our wedding anniversary, and I was determined to make one last effort to save what we had. I'd been planning for weeks, made reservations at the restaurant where we'd had our first date, bought a beautiful necklace with alpaca wool fiber woven into the design, even arranged for my brother to handle the evening feeding. Happy anniversary, sweetheart, I said that morning, presenting her with coffee in bed and the small wrapped box. Celeste barely looked up from her phone. Thanks, Wes. That's sweet. She opened the gift without enthusiasm, glanced at the necklace, and set it aside. Very nice. I appreciate it. No smile. No kiss. No emotion whatsoever. I made reservations at Romano's for tonight, I said, trying to keep the hope alive in my voice. 7 o'clock, just like our first date. Oh, she finally looked at me, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. I actually have plans tonight. Sarah's having some kind of crisis, and I promised to be there for her. Sarah again. Always Sarah. It's our anniversary, Celeste. Our 17th anniversary. I know what day it is, Wes, she snapped. But sometimes life doesn't revolve around arbitrary dates. Sarah needs me. Arbitrary dates. That's what our wedding anniversary had become. I stood there for a moment, watching her scroll through her phone like I wasn't even in the room. Then I did something I'd never done before. I reached over and gently took the phone from her hands. Hey, she protested, reaching for it. Look at me, I said firmly. For once, just look at me and tell me what's really going on. Her eyes flashed with anger. Give me my phone back, Wesley. Not until you talk to me. Really talk to me. We used to be able to talk about anything. Maybe that's the problem, she said, standing up from the bed. Maybe I don't want to talk to you anymore. Maybe I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. Then tell me what's wrong. Tell me how to fix it. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You can't fix everything with hard work and good intentions, Wes. Some things are just broken. I handed her the phone back, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. So that's it. You're giving up on us. I'm not giving up, she said, her voice getting colder. I'm just being honest for the first time in months. This isn't working anymore. That evening, I sat alone at Romano's, staring at two-place settings and wondering how 17 years could just evaporate. The waiter kept asking if I was waiting for someone, and I kept saying yes, even though I knew she wasn't coming. I drove home around 9, expecting to find the house empty, but Celeste's car was in the driveway. When I walked in, I could hear her laughing upstairs, that genuine, happy laugh I hadn't heard in months. She was on the phone, her door closed, but her voice carried through the thin walls. I know, she was saying. You look so pathetic with that little box. Like a puppy bringing you a dead bird. My blood ran cold. She was talking about me, about our anniversary, about the gift I'd spent weeks choosing. I stood in the hallway, listening to my wife mock our marriage to someone else, and I realized that whatever we'd had was already over. The only question now was whether I had the courage to admit it. 3 weeks later came my sister, Jenny's birthday party. I almost didn't go. The thought of pretending everything was fine while Celeste and I barely spoke seemed exhausting. But Jenny had always been good to us, and I couldn't let my marriage problems ruin her day. The surprise was that Celeste actually wanted to come. Of course I'm going, she said when I mentioned it. Jenny's like a sister to me. That should have made me happy, but something felt off about her enthusiasm. We arrived at Jenny's house around 2 in the afternoon. The backyard was full of family and friends, kids running around, adults clustered in groups with drinks and conversation. It felt good to be around normal people, living normal lives. That's when I saw him. Brantley Moss was standing by the barbecue grill, beer in hand, laughing at something my brother-in-law had said. Brant had been my best friend since high school, my best man at our wedding, the guy who'd helped me build the first alpaca shelter with his own 2 hands. What was he doing here? He lived 2 hours away and barely knew Jenny. Brant, Celeste called out, her voice suddenly bright and animated. I didn't know you were coming. She practically bounced over to him, and I watched in slow motion as they hugged. Not a polite family friend hug. This was longer, tighter, more intimate. Her hand lingered on his back. His hand dropped lower than it should have. I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. "Hey, Wes," Brant called out, waving me over with a grin that seemed forced. "Great party." "Yeah," I managed, walking over on unsteady legs. "Great party." The three of us stood there in an awkward triangle, and I watched them try not to look at each other while trying to act normal around me. It was like watching a bad play where the actors kept forgetting their lines. Brant was just telling me about his new job, Celeste said, her cheeks slightly flushed. "He's working on some big construction project in Billings." "That's nice," I said, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Yeah, it keeps me pretty busy," Brant said, glancing at Celeste. "But I try to get down this way when I can. To check on old friends." "Old friends." Right. I watched them throughout the afternoon, cataloging every glance, every casual touch, every inside joke. The way Celeste laughed at things Brant said that weren't particularly funny. The way he found excuses to stand near her. The way they both seemed to forget I existed when they got caught up in conversation. The final nail in the coffin came when I went inside to help Jenny carry out the birthday cake. Through the kitchen window, I could see them by the fence, standing closer than two people should if they're just friends. Celeste was touching his arm, looking up at him with an expression I recognized but hadn't seen directed at me in months. Then Brant reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and she didn't pull away. I stood there holding that stupid birthday cake, watching my wife and my best friend, and everything suddenly made sense. The mysterious Sarah, the constant phone calls, the new clothes, and the gym membership. The way she'd been pulling away from me for months. Sarah didn't exist. Sarah was Brant. When I finally walked back outside with the cake, they had separated and were making small talk with other guests. But the damage was done. I could see the truth now, and I couldn't unsee it. That night, Brant left his phone in Celeste's car. Finding Brant's phone was like discovering a smoking gun. The lock screen showed a preview of the latest message from someone saved as "My beautiful C," and the timestamp was from just 20 minutes ago, during the party. I scrolled through the messages, my stomach churning with each revelation. Months of conversations, intimate photos, plans for meetings while I was out working the farm. They'd been meeting at a motel outside of town twice a week for the past 8 months. The worst part was reading how they talked about me. "He's so clueless." One message from Celeste read, "Sometimes I feel bad, but then he does something so predictably boring that I remember why I need this." Brant's responses were equally brutal. "The guy's a saint, which makes him incredibly dull. You deserve better than a life spent watching alpacas." I sat in my truck outside Jenny's house for an hour, reading through their entire relationship. They'd started as emotional support during her difficult marriage, progressed to physical meetings, and were now making plans for a future together. She'd already transferred money to a separate account. They were planning to leave town together after the holidays. I drove home in a fog, the phone burning like acid in my pocket. Celeste was already asleep when I got there, or pretending to be. I stood in the doorway watching her breathe, wondering how someone could lie so completely while looking so peaceful. The next morning, I confronted her with the evidence. "Whose phone is this, Celeste?" She looked up from her coffee, saw the device in my hand, and her face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice shook. "Brant forgot it in your car last night. I've read everything." For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. Then something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe, or defiance. "Good," she said, standing up straighter. "I'm tired of pretending. 8 months, Celeste. 8 months you've been lying to my face." "I've been trying to find the courage to leave," she said. "Brant makes me feel alive in ways you never could. So instead of talking to me, instead of giving me a chance to fix things, you decided to have an affair with my best friend." Her laugh was bitter. "Fix things? Wes, you can't fix this. You can't fix us. Some people just aren't meant to be together. We were meant to be together for 17 years. "No," she said, her voice getting colder. "I was settling for 17 years. There's a difference." I handed her the phone. "No more us goodbye," I said firmly. "Pack your things. I want you gone by tonight. You can't throw me out of my own house. It's not your house anymore. Your name isn't on the deed, remember?" We never got around to changing it after my father died. Her face fell as she realized I was right. Wes, let's talk about this rationally. We can work out some kind of arrangement. The arrangement is simple. You leave. You take what's yours, and you go build that exciting life with Brant. What about the farm? What about our business? You checked out of this business months ago. The alpacas will be fine without you. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, try to figure out how to salvage something from the wreckage. You'll regret this, Wesley, she said finally. You'll realize what you've lost and come begging. The only thing I regret, I said, is not seeing who you really were sooner. Celeste was packed and gone by evening, taking only her clothes and personal items. She tried to negotiate for more, half the farm equipment, half the alpaca herd, half the business accounts, but I stood firm. She'd forfeited any claim to our shared assets the moment she started planning her exit strategy with my money and my best friend. You can't just cut me off, Wes, she said as she loaded her car. I helped build this place. You helped until you decided to tear it down, I replied. Brant's expecting you. Don't keep him waiting. I watched her drive away without feeling anything. No sadness, no regret, just a hollow emptiness where 17 years of marriage used to be. The alpacas sensed the change immediately. Luna actually seemed calmer, and Bruno trotted over to the fence like he was checking to make sure I was okay. It's just us now, boys and girls, I told them, scratching Bruno's neck. We'll figure it out. The next few days brought a parade of revelations. My bank called about unauthorized transfers from our joint savings account. Celeste had moved $12,000 a day before I found the phone. My sister called, apologizing for not warning me about Brant being at the party. I thought it was weird that he showed up, Jenny said, but I figured you knew he was coming. Did you see them together? Everyone saw them together, Wes. I'm sorry. We should have said something. That stung worse than the betrayal itself. Not only had my wife been cheating with my best friend, but it had been obvious enough that my own family noticed. Brant called 3 days later, drunk and rambling. Wes, man, I need to explain, he slurred into the phone. It just happened, you know? We didn't plan it. 8 months isn't something that just happens, Brant. She was so unhappy, and you were always working, and she needed someone to talk to. So you decided to be her shoulder to cry on? How noble of you. Look, I know you hate me, but she's happy now. Really happy. Isn't that what matters? What matters is that you both lied to me for months while planning to destroy my life. We never wanted to hurt you. Then you should have stayed away from my wife. I hung up and blocked his number. Whatever friendship weed had died the moment he put his hands on Celeste. A week later, I got a call from a lawyer representing both of them. They wanted to negotiate a settlement. Celeste felt entitled to half of everything, including the farm. Tell your clients, I told the lawyer, that they can feel entitled to whatever they want. But legally, they'll get what they're owed, which is nothing. The farm actually ran smoother without the constant tension. I hired a local college kid to help with the daily chores and started sleeping better than I had in months. The alpacas were producing better wool. The tours were more enjoyable without Celeste's fake smiles. And I remembered why I'd fallen in love with this life in the first place. 2 weeks after she left, I found myself standing in the same spot where I'd first told her I loved her, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. But instead of feeling sad about the memories, I felt relieved. I was free to build something real again, with someone who actually wanted to be there. 2 weeks after Celeste left, she launched her revenge campaign. It started with a post on a local Facebook community page, a vague but pointed message about emotional abuse and controlling behavior from someone who'd recently escaped a toxic situation. She didn't mention my name directly, but everyone in our small Montana town knew exactly who she was talking about. The post got dozens of sympathetic comments from people who had no idea what really happened. Then came the phone calls to my customers. 3 of my biggest alpaca wool buyers suddenly canceled their orders, claiming they'd heard some concerning things and needed to reevaluate their vendor relationships. When I pressed for details, they hemmed and hawed about domestic issues and not wanting to get involved. Celeste was systematically trying to destroy my business. The breaking point came when my insurance agent called. Someone had filed a complaint with the state agricultural board, claiming I was mistreating the alpacas and operating an unsafe facility. The complaint was anonymous, but the timing wasn't coincidental. This is insane, I told my sister Jenny when she came by to check on me. She's trying to ruin everything I've worked for. Have you thought about fighting back? Jenny asked. You have evidence of what she did. Maybe it's time people knew the truth. I've been trying to take the high road, focusing on rebuilding rather than revenge. But watching Celeste systematically attack my livelihood while playing the victim made my blood boil. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened my own social media account and posted the truth. Not the messages between her and Brant. I wasn't going to stoop that low, but a clear, factual account of what happened. Some of you may have heard rumors about my recent divorce. I wrote, I want to set the record straight. My wife of 17 years was having an affair with my best friend for 8 months while planning to leave with our joint savings. I discovered this, asked her to leave, and she did. That's the whole story. I'm focused on moving forward with my life and my business, which continues to operate with the same standards it always has. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Customers reached out to apologize and restore their orders. Neighbors stopped by to offer support. Even people I barely knew commented with encouragement and shared their own stories of betrayal and recovery. Within 48 hours, Celeste's sympathy narrative had completely collapsed. People started asking pointed questions about her version of events. The Agricultural Board complaint was quickly dismissed after a thorough inspection showed my facilities exceeded all safety requirements. But Celeste wasn't done. If anything, my public response seemed to enrage her further. She escalated to making direct accusations, claiming I'd been psychologically abusive throughout our marriage and that she'd been afraid to leave sooner. That's when I decided to stop playing defense and go on the offensive. I contacted a lawyer, not for divorce proceedings, since we were already separated, but for defamation. Patricia Wells, the same attorney who'd helped my neighbor with a similar case, reviewed Celeste's posts and statements. This crosses the line from opinion into actionable defamation, she said, especially since you can prove her claims are false and motivated by revenge. We sent Celeste a cease and desist letter, demanding she stop making false statements about me or face legal consequences. We also gathered sworn statements from friends and family who could testify to the actual nature of our marriage. The letter worked. Within a week, Celeste had deleted all her posts and stopped talking to anyone in town. Brand apparently advised her to lay low until things cooled down. But the damage to their reputation was permanent. In a small town like ours, truth has a way of surfacing, and people don't forget when someone tries to manipulate them with lies. By spring, life had settled into a new rhythm that was surprisingly peaceful. The alpacas were thriving, my business was stronger than ever, and I'd rediscovered what it felt like to wake up without walking on eggshells. The biggest change was hiring Sarah Mitchell as my farm manager. Unlike the fictional Sarah that Celeste had invented, this Sarah was real, a recent agricultural college graduate who knew more about alpaca breeding and wool production than I'd learned in 15 years. Your breeding program has incredible potential, she told me during her interview. With better genetic tracking and selective pairing, you could produce championship quality animals within 3 generations. Sarah wasn't just competent. She was passionate about the work in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with farming in the first place. She arrived early, stayed late, and treated each alpaca like they were her own children. Luna's showing signs of being ready to breed again, Sarah said one morning as we walked through the pasture. If we pair her with that new male you're considering purchasing, their offspring could be extraordinary. Working alongside someone who actually cared about what we were building felt like breathing again. Sarah had ideas for expanding our tours, developing new wool products, and even hosting educational workshops for other aspiring alpaca farmers. The contrast with Celeste was stark. Where my ex-wife had seen the farm as a burden that tied her down, Sarah saw it as an opportunity for growth and innovation. Have you considered offering fiber arts classes? She suggested one afternoon. There's a huge market for people who want to learn spinning and weaving with alpaca wool. We could charge premium rates for hands-on experiences. 3 months after she started, our revenue had increased by 40%. More importantly, I was enjoying the work again instead of dreading it. I also got closure on the Brant situation when he showed up at my door one evening, clearly drunk and looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. She left me, he said without preamble. Celeste. She's gone. I didn't invite him in, but I listened from the doorway as he told his pathetic story. Apparently, once the excitement of their affair wore off and they had to deal with real life together, Celeste discovered that Brant wasn't the exciting escape she'd imagined. She said, "I was just as boring as you were," he said, laughing bitterly. "Turns out the problem wasn't you, Wes. The problem was her. She's never satisfied with anything." "I could have told you that," I said. "I'm sorry, man. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I needed to say it. I destroyed our friendship for someone who was never worth it." I looked at this broken man who'd once been my best friend, and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no desire for revenge. Just indifference. "You're right," I said. "It doesn't mean much now, but thanks for saying it." He left, and I never saw him again. Last I heard, he'd moved back to his hometown and was working construction again. As for Celeste, she'd apparently moved to Denver with some new guy she'd met online. The pattern was repeating itself. She'd trade up to someone she thought would give her a more exciting life, only to discover that the excitement was never the real problem. Me? I was building something real with someone who wanted to be there. Sarah and I had become more than business partners, though we were taking things slow and building on friendship first. Standing in the same pasture where I'd once felt trapped and miserable, watching the alpacas graze peacefully in the evening light, I realized something important. The best revenge really is living well. A year after Celeste left, I got a call that changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The caller was Derek Morrison, a man I'd never heard of, but who knew more about my ex-wife than I ever had. "I found your number through a mutual acquaintance," Derek said. "I think we need to talk. It's about Celeste." We met at a diner in Billings, and Derek told me a story that made my blood run cold. He'd been married to a woman named Christine 3 years ago, a woman who looked exactly like Celeste but with different hair and a slightly different name. "She did the same thing to me," Derek said, sliding a folder across the table. 8 months of lies, affair with my best friend, systematic manipulation, then a campaign to destroy my reputation when I fought back. The photos in the folder showed Christine/Celeste with Derek at their wedding, at family gatherings, in settings that looked disturbingly familiar. The timeline was identical. Gradual withdrawal, mysterious phone calls, new clothes, gym membership, then the affair and abandonment. "She's done this before," I said, staring at the evidence. "More than once, according to what I've learned. There's a blog online where other men have shared similar stories. Different names, different cities, but the same pattern every time." Derek showed me the blog on his phone. 12 men, all telling variations of the same story. A charming woman who swept them off their feet, married them, lived the perfect life for a few years, then systematically destroyed everything while positioning herself as the victim. "She's not just a cheater," Derek explained. "She's a predator. She targets successful men, bleeds them dry emotionally and financially, then moves on to the next victim." The revelation was sickening, but also liberating. It meant that nothing about our marriage had been real. I hadn't failed as a husband. I'd been selected as a target. "What happened to her after she left you?" I asked. "Same thing that'll happen with the next guy. Once the excitement wears off and real life sets in, she gets bored and starts looking for the next mark. My sources say she's already moved on for Brant." That evening, I called Brant. We hadn't spoken since that drunken visit months ago, but Derek's revelations made me see him differently. He'd been manipulated just like I had. "She's gone," Brant confirmed. "Left 2 months ago for some guy in Colorado she met online. Took everything I had saved and disappeared." "I'm sorry, man." "Don't be. You tried to warn me, and I was too stupid to listen. She played us both." Derek had connected me with a private investigator who specialized in tracking con artists. Within a week, we had a complete profile of Celeste's activities over the past decade. 5 marriages, dozens of affairs, a trail of financial devastation spanning multiple states. "She's a professional," the investigator explained. "This isn't emotional behavior. It's calculated criminal activity." Armed with this evidence, Derek and I, along with 2 other victims, filed a joint complaint with the FBI. Financial fraud across state lines made it a federal case. The last I heard, Celeste was facing multiple felony charges and had been arrested in Denver while trying to marry victim number 6. Justice felt good, but the real victory was simpler. I'd learned to trust my instincts again, and I was building a life with people who were exactly who they claimed to be. 2 years after Celeste left, I stood in the same pasture where I'd once felt trapped and miserable, but everything had changed. The alpacas were thriving, the business was more successful than ever, and I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. Sarah and I had grown closer gradually, building our relationship on honesty and shared goals rather than manipulation and drama. She'd moved into the farmhouse 6 months ago, not as a replacement for what I'd lost, but as a partner in creating something entirely new. The breeding program is exceeding all projections, Sarah said, joining me by the fence where Luna was grazing with her newest offspring. 3 champion bloodlines established, and we have waiting lists for the next 2 breeding seasons. We'd expanded beyond my wildest dreams. The farm now hosted workshops, agritourism events, and educational programs. Sarah's business degree, combined with my agricultural experience, had created something neither of us could have built alone. "There's something I want to show you," I said, leading her to the barn where I'd been working on a surprise. Inside was a beautifully crafted wooden sign, Harwick Mitchell Alpaca Ranch, AST 2023. Below it was a smaller sign, Partners in Life and Livestock. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Wesley, are you asking what I think you're asking?" I dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring I'd had made from Montana sapphires set in local gold. "Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me and help me build something real?" Her answer was yes, followed by the kind of kiss that promised a lifetime of genuine partnership. The wedding was everything my first one wasn't. Small, honest, surrounded by people who actually cared about our happiness. Derek Morrison came, along with 3 other men whose lives had been touched by Celeste's destruction. We'd formed an unlikely brotherhood of survivors, supporting each other's healing and growth. "Here's to second chances," Derek toasted at the reception, "and to women who love us for who we are, not what they can take from us." As Sarah and I danced under the Montana stars, surrounded by family and friends who knew our whole story and loved us anyway, I thought about the man I'd been 2 years ago. Confused, hurt, blaming himself for someone else's calculated cruelty. That man was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more grateful for authentic love. The alpacas watched from their pasture, peaceful and content, as we celebrated not just a wedding, but a new beginning built on truth instead of lies. Celeste had tried to destroy me, but instead she'd freed me to find my real life. And for that, I was almost grateful.